Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today I'm covering the Great Snail Race and Mid-Life Crustacean. Oh dear. I feel like I'm being handed a controversy bomb right now. I mean, obviously one of these episodes is more controversial than the other, but I think both of these episodes have some level of division over them, but for wildly different reasons. So let me talk about that, or at least let me talk about it as soon as I extend my customary thank you to everyone watching today. And with that, let's just get right into these reviews. Is it true? Is it really true? Is this really an episode focused on Gary the Snail? Oh, my prayers have been answered. Or, well, they would have been answered if The Great Snail Race was a more enjoyable episode. I don't think it should surprise anyone that I've got a couple issues with this episode, but it might surprise y'all to hear that despite that, I like this episode anyway. So let's talk about that. I'd say that the Great Snail Race starts off pretty well. I love how offended SpongeBob gets on Gary's behalf when Squidward starts talking shit. And yes, Squidward is on my shit list for talking smack about Gary, because who do you think you are? Anyway, that aside, I like this moment because I like seeing the bond between SpongeBob and Gary, which makes this gratifying. And also because SpongeBob very rarely gets mad at Squidward when he acts like a jerk, and y'all know how much I love to see that. I also love how this beginning scene gets right into the thick of things with the running joke of nobody knowing Squidward's last name, which is a joke that works in each and every iteration it has presented in this episode. Now, why Squidward decided he wants to enter a snail into this race is anyone's guess, considering he has never shown interest in snail racing or even pets before, but perhaps this is just a new dimension to his character that had yet to be revealed to us. Or maybe he just wanted a trophy and some prestige. That latter point is far more likely, isn't it? But also, maybe Squidward is the exact kind of snob who'd be into horse races or dog races. Okay, I'm getting off topic now. I like the back and forth between SpongeBob and Squidward here. It's not particularly funny or anything, but it is fun to watch, considering that these two are not especially prone to banter. It's almost like I'm watching Employee of the Month again. And I like that SpongeBob is unfazed by Squidward's words until he realizes that Squidward is insulting Gary. And then lastly, I love the quick cut to Sandy after SpongeBob says something misogynistic. This episode is very good at letting gags hang in the air before bringing them back at just the right moment. Because really, the audience has no actual reason to expect that this little bit with Sandy would turn out to be a brick joke, because as a joke, it could have worked on its own without the callback. But there's no denying that the callback at the end makes it so much better. Also, I've heard through the grapevine that some people think that this joke makes SpongeBob out of character since he's being a misogynist, but I don't really see that at all. And honestly, this video is going to be too long for me to really get into that, but I just don't see it. The Great Snail Race keeps up its good momentum during its next segment, where SpongeBob starts training Gary. The bit with the training smoothie is pretty funny, both because of SpongeBob's quips and because of Gary getting the hell out of Dodge before SpongeBob can make him drink that nasty-ass smoothie. I can't blame him. And then the whole part with SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward is really great. Like, I love how entertaining their banter is. And there is, of course, lots of great jokes here as well, like the part with Patrick standing on Squidward. Around here, the montage of SpongeBob training Gary, is where the good momentum of the episode comes to a halt. Perhaps not a screeching halt, but a pretty quick deceleration. Like when a light turns yellow and you could go through the intersection, but you decide not to. The montage of SpongeBob training Gary has me of two minds. On one hand, it is admittedly entertaining to see SpongeBob take this training and this race so seriously with his little outfit and all his yelling, but it isn't exactly funny. Seeing Gary do all of these activities is fine until the montage ends with him lugging SpongeBob in a wagon, all worn down. That's not exactly a pretty or appealing sight to me, at all, but it could have been much worse than this, and obviously it's supposed to be unappealing, so there is that. Thankfully, we cut away from this to make a return to some more funny stuff. I really liked the bit with Nat in the announcer booth before getting kicked out by the real announcer because of how unexpected it was, which just made it hilarious. What isn't quite as funny, or actually what wasn't funny to me at all, was the bit with the old snail. Too slow and dull for me, which again, yes, I know that's the point of the joke, but jokes like that are really hard for me to enjoy. Like, yeah, I just finished reviewing an episode that did them well, i.e. Ugh, but it's a very difficult feat, admittedly. And of course, this less than funny joke leads us right to Squidward and SpongeBob, where we once again see a very tired Gary, and then SpongeBob yelling at Gary once the race begins. This part of the episode is probably the most divisive of them all. By that, I mean there are people who really hate the racing segment, and there are people who really like it. It might surprise you all to know that I'm in the latter half. Yeah, I think the episode takes a turn for the better when the results of SpongeBob's behavior towards Gary start to show themselves in this race. I think the visuals of Gary literally starting to explode are both impressive and grotesque. And it's kind of funny how the pets are just proxies for cars in this race, especially considering that horse racing does exist, but decided to go with the car allegory at this point. I also really like that SpongeBob immediately starts showing remorse as soon as Gary starts showing some problems out on the track. Gary then going out of control is deliciously dramatic, complete with some firefighters. Although I don't know why the crowd was like cheering during this point. Um, like, do y'all have no humanity? And I love that Squidward gets his just desserts as well, because I don't think that we forgot about him in all this. And Squidward gets his just desserts when Snelly goes back to help Gary, which was wholesome. And I love that Patrick, who treated his pet the best out of everyone, got the win here. It's absurd and deserved, even if that was a low bar to cross. And then we've got the somewhat iconic, or at least memorable, ending of the Great Snail Race, which resolved not one but two brick jokes. Well, one was more of a running gag, but it's that kind of rule of three that I like to see. But anyway, the Squidward tortellini line never gets old to me. It's delivered so well by Roger Bumpus, and it's absolutely hilarious. And then just when the episode seems ready to close, we have the surprise conclusion to the joke involving Sandy from earlier, as Sandy appears out of nowhere and kicks SpongeBob's butt for the misogynistic things he said the day before. This was unexpected and truly hilarious, and also a great way to give SpongeBob his own brand of universal justice, since he deserved just a bit more than the emotional pain from seeing Gary explode for his actions in this episode. Upon thinking about it, The Great Snail Race is actually a pretty good episode, even if my intro implied that I felt otherwise. And looking back on it, this episode did not have as much Gary torture as I used to think it did, which is why I'd always felt negatively about this episode growing up, and so barely watched it. It's enjoyable seeing SpongeBob and Squidward compete in this episode, as their banter is a delight, and there's lots of great gags in this episode, with some of the best running gags and brick jokes this show has had up to this point. However, Gary still does absolutely get the short end of the stick in this one, which is not so entertaining, especially to me, the very much biased Gary the Snail lover. So that has the effect of knocking this episode down a tier, where it will be in my great tier, coming in with a score of 8 out of 10. For this video's second review, we've got Mid-Life Crustacean. What's funny to me about this episode is that, in general, I wouldn't say I have very much to say about it, but of course now in the last few years, this episode has found itself in the midst of some controversy that I will be speaking on. I was debating on where I was going to discuss the elephant in the room, and I've decided I'll do so at the end of this review. I'll have a timestamp for that part anyway, so let me move on into actually beginning to review this episode. So, y'all know that I love how SpongeBob SquarePants is a show about adults that's meant for children. I feel like I say this, or at least something referring to the child-adult line, at least once a video. And so, y'all can imagine my joy when I see that this episode is about Mr. Krabs having a freaking midlife crisis. Like, how much more adult can you get than an episode exploring middle age? In my opinion, Mid-Life Crustacean does this very well, and it does so in a way that's funny and accessible for kids, making this episode an enjoyable experience for all ages. I really love how the beginning of Mid-Life Crustacean lays it on just about as thick as possible that Mr. Krabs feels old as hell. I mean, we've got him creaking out of bed with the music, and that comedically ginormous pill that Pearl dutifully gives him. I'm rather impressed by Mr. Krabs' ability to swallow that thing. And then the sequence of Mr. Krabs walking to the Krusty Krab is great, with the Boy Scout and his arm coming off, and with Harold being an asshole for no reason, like he could have just walked around Mr. Krabs from the beginning. And then the hilarious turn signal joke followed by the line to the cemetery, the ice cream stand. The townspeople in this episode are just so out of pocket, but in an entertaining way, which is what separates this episode from one, what's a famous example? Oh yeah, Stuck in the Ringer. I'm thinking of that mother who literally calls Mr. Krabs old and dried out for literally no reason, too funny. I think one of the things that helps an episode with asshole bikini bottomites not be insufferable is by making sure that there aren't too many asshole bikini bottomites, it doesn't feel like a pile-on. There are other reasons why this episode works in this regard where others don't, but I don't want to go down this tangent, and I'll be exploring those reasons in reviews of those episodes anyway. We then get the entrance of the young people, SpongeBob and Patrick. I've got a somewhat relevant fun fact about this scene. I used to have a highly pixelated image of the back and forth between the two, ending with, "I'm already hearing voices," as one of my computer backgrounds on my first laptop. Oh, how the years fly by. But even all these years later, this moment still holds up, especially when Squidward gets involved. And also there's great facial expressions all over this scene. I love how Mr. Krabs starts eavesdropping more and more, obviously, on SpongeBob and Patrick, especially when his eyes end up landing on SpongeBob's shoulders. The suave dorkiness of SpongeBob and Patrick in this episode is just amazing. I really love how it feels like we're watching them from a different perspective than we're usually given, because, well, we are, considering that this episode is about Mr. Krabs, and is kind of, in that way, from his point of view. And I love that we as the audience can pick up on the fact that SpongeBob and Patrick probably have nothing stereotypically cool planned, given that we're familiar with their characters by this point. But even if we didn't have that context, this episode does enough to show how uncool these guys are. This is especially clear once the best friends arrive fashionably late, with that joke landing perfectly due to the time card. I love the back and forth between Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob, and Patrick, which is instantly enhanced when Pearl comes in to save us from the utter cringe. Wait, actually this is important. Future episodes take notes. This is how you do secondhand embarrassment without it being hard to watch. Anyway, SpongeBob and Patrick's ever-present optimism is such a highlight of this episode. Seeing them never really get bogged down no matter how much other people insult them is kind of heartwarming in a way, and perhaps a good lesson to everyone to just be true to yourself and find joy in who you are, but maybe that's just me. The montage of SpongeBob, Patrick, and Mr. Krabs having a night of debauchery is fun too. By the way, that is a quote, or at least a word that I use frequently. It was actually just my birthday recently, so that was quite the night of debauchery if I've got anything to say about it. Anyway, I've gotta say, I would definitely enjoy some of these things. Like, let me be so real right now. Like the pool at night, reading at the library, man, count me in. I love the repeated, "Are you feeling it now, Mr. Krabs?" Another quotable moment, which culminates in the hilarious scene at the kids' play area when Mr. Krabs has finally had enough. Gotta say, I love the music in this scene, Dom Bumble. It played previously in Patrick's Dream and Sleepy Time, and also in Shanghai when Patrick and SpongeBob ice skate. Yeah, that's all random trivia that has nothing to do with anything, but now y'all are a little richer in SpongeBob music knowledge, so you're welcome. We then, of course, enter into the last bit of the episode, which is the bit that everyone is probably familiar with for one reason or another. Before I get into that, though, let me just say that I love the little painting of SpongeBob and Patrick when they say, "Not lame." It's so cute. Now, let's talk about that panty raid joke. It is quite absurd, which I think is supposed to be its appeal, but let's be honest, it's fucking weird. So fucking weird. Hooky levels of weird. Especially when the house that the men raid turned out to be Mr. Krabs' mom's. It's so messed up that you have to laugh, which I do, I'll be honest about that. But I also have so many questions, particularly about SpongeBob's "you didn't ask" towards Mr. Krabs. So does that mean this episode is telling me that SpongeBob and Patrick knew this was Mr. Krabs' mom's house, and they went there purposefully? Okay, talking about making a weird-ass scene even weirder. Moving on to the very end, I do like how in order to feel young again, Mr. Krabs has to have his metaphorical ass handed to him by his mother. Him laying in his childhood bedroom is funny, and a nice way to close out the episode. Mid-Life Crustacean is a really solid episode, both enjoyable and funny, even if not packed with that many amazing jokes. However, my main problem with this episode is, of course, the panty raid joke that works increasingly less on me. And keeping this somewhat poor joke in mind, although it probably would have landed here even without the joke, I have to put Mid-Life Crustacean in my great tier, where it comes in with a score of 8 out of 10. Alright, and now that I've gone through the whole episode, let's address the elephant in the room. You can consider this to be the closing thoughts portion of this video, despite the visuals. So, Mid-Life Crustacean has been removed from streaming platforms, and has been for I think a couple of years now, and we all know it was because of the panty raid scene, because there's literally nothing else it could be. The first thing I want to say is that the panty raid scene doesn't ruin the episode for me, probably because this episode had a lot of great things going for it, so it's got multiple legs up on Hooky in that regard. I keep bringing up Hooky because it's the only other episode so far that's had this kind of uncomfortable joke, although clearly that episode has gotten and still has gotten a pass. But anyway, it is true that the panty raid joke does leave a bad taste in my mouth. It's just weird. I already explained it, it's weird as hell. It's damn near sexualizing in a way that this show basically never is, and it's quite uncomfortable. However, finding a joke to be uncomfortable and feeling super good about an episode ban are two different things. And my main feeling about the unofficial ban here is that it's too little too late. I mean, for God's sake, the episode has been out for like 20 years when they started doing this shit. That to me screams PR stunt, especially considering the timing of it all. I mean, Me Too, anyone? And that's not to discredit that movement. Don't go putting words in my mouth or I'll be putting my foot up your ass. And that's that on that. But anyway, let's talk about the real problem here. Why did this joke pass the censors in the first place? Who even wrote this joke? First off, it's out of character. Since when did SpongeBob and Patrick seem like the type of people to do panty raids? Especially goody two-shoes SpongeBob? Like, get serious. But more seriously, the issues surrounding this joke extend far beyond the joke because, like, there's teams of writers, teams of editors, teams of execs who all found this joke to be perfectly fine. While I don't necessarily find this joke offensive, it is quite uncomfortable, and so I'm a little disconcerted that so many people found this okay. But whatever. I'll just end this by saying that my problem is not, and it never was, with the joke itself, but rather what it revealed about Nickelodeon in its inclusion and its role in Mid-Life Crustacean being unofficially banned nearly 20 years after it aired. Oh, and I guess I'll just make it clear, do I think Mid-Life Crustacean should have been banned? No, I don't. I'm not generally a fan of banning things unless they're actual crimes against humanity. The panty raid joke is not nearly as bad as it can sometimes be made out to be, but I'm also not going to deny that it makes me uncomfortable. It's a rather unfortunate situation, as the episode sits on the precipice between acceptable and unacceptable. The joke really shouldn't have made it past critical reflection in the first place, but that didn't happen, so this is where we're at now. If any action was going to be taken on this episode, I think the most fair thing would have been to pull it from reruns, so it's less likely that kids would stumble upon it, but now with streaming being so ubiquitous, maybe that's not accurate anymore. And pull it from reruns and leave it on streaming. I understand why the choice was made to remove it from streaming platforms, but ultimately it is a choice that I disagree with. And no, it's not the result of woke cancel culture or whatever other bullshit conservative idiots spout nowadays. Hopefully none of y'all watching say that bullshit, but I gotta cover my bases.